There is a strange kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone, but from being unseen. It belongs to those who, from a young age, sense that they do not quite fit into the rhythm of the world around them. Their questions go deeper. Their silence lasts longer. Their thoughts refuse to stay on the surface. While others are rewarded early for conformity, these individuals are often misunderstood, overlooked, or quietly rejected. And yet, history whispers a paradox. Many of those who are dismissed early become forces of influence later in life. The very traits that once isolated them become the foundation of their success. This is the story of the rare personality, rejected early, but fulfilled late. Some minds are not shaped to mirror the present moment. They do not move in harmony with the noise, the trends, or the urgency of their time. Instead, they lean forward, listening to something faint, something not yet fully formed. From early life, such individuals sense a quiet dissonance between themselves and the world around them. While others adapt quickly to expectations, they hesitate, not out of fear, but out of depth. They pause because they are inwardly occupied, because their psyche is engaged in a slower, more complex dialogue with reality. In environments that reward speed, efficiency, and repetition, this inwardness is easily mistaken for weakness. The child who thinks too long before answering, the student who questions the premise instead of memorizing the response, the young adult who resists conventional ambition, all are subtly marked as behind. Yet what appears as delay is often incubation. These individuals are not absent, they are elsewhere. Their attention is turned inward, toward meaning rather than approval, toward understanding rather than performance. They are attempting, often unconsciously, to reconcile the outer world with an inner vision that has not yet found language. This creates friction. Teachers may grow impatient. Peers may lose interest. Institutions, built to standardize and accelerate, have little tolerance for those who move according to an inner rhythm. And so the rare personality begins life under a quiet shadow of misunderstanding. History repeatedly confirms this pattern. Certain individuals arrive carrying images, ideas, or sensitivities that their time is unequipped to receive. Vincent van Gogh is often mentioned not because his suffering was unique, but because it was archetypal. His inner world overflowed with intensity and symbolism that his contemporaries could neither value nor comprehend. He was not rejected because he lacked ability, but because his perception exceeded the collective frame of reference. His work belonged to a future that had not yet developed the eyes to see it. The tragedy lies not only in his personal suffering, but in society's recurring inability to recognize what does not conform to its current language. Psychological research into creativity echoes this truth. Highly original individuals often experience early social rejection precisely because originality disrupts group cohesion. Groups survive by agreement. Novelty threatens that agreement. When someone perceives differently, thinks differently, or values differently, they unconsciously expose the limitations of the collective. This exposure is uncomfortable. Rather than questioning itself, the group often labels the individual as strange, impractical, or unrealistic. Thus, rejection becomes a defensive act, not against the person, but against the unknown they represent. For the rare personality, this rejection is deeply formative. Being ahead of one's time means living without mirrors. There are few reflections to confirm identity, few external signs that say, "You belong." As a result, these individuals are forced into an early confrontation with solitude. This solitude is not merely social, it is existential. They must ask themselves who they are without validation, what they value without applause, and whether meaning can exist without recognition. Such questions, though painful, accelerate inner development. While others build themselves outwardly, these individuals are compelled to build inwardly. This inward turn often creates the impression of detachment. They may appear withdrawn, uninterested in competition, or indifferent to status. In truth, they are engaged in a different task altogether, the slow integration of their inner world. They are attempting to give form to something that has not yet found its place in the collective. This task requires patience, solitude, and a tolerance for ambiguity, qualities rarely rewarded early in life. But over time, these same qualities become the foundation of wisdom. Being ahead of one's time also means carrying a burden of doubt. Not only doubt from others, but doubt within oneself. When the world offers no confirmation, the individual may question their own reality. Am I wrong? Am I missing something everyone else understands? This inner conflict can be exhausting, yet it also refines discernment. Through repeated self-questioning, the rare personality learns to distinguish between authentic inner truth and mere insecurity. Slowly, a quiet confidence emerges, not the loud confidence of certainty, but the grounded confidence of self-knowledge. What society initially labels as impractical often reveals itself later as visionary. The ideas once dismissed as unrealistic become necessary when old systems fail. The sensitivity once mocked becomes essential in times of emotional and moral crisis. The depth once ignored becomes guidance when superficial solutions collapse. In this way, the rare personality does not simply survive rejection. It is shaped by it. The delay becomes preparation. The isolation becomes orientation. To live ahead of one's time is to walk without a map, guided by an inner compass that others cannot see. It is to accept being misunderstood without surrendering to bitterness. It is to trust that meaning unfolds on a longer timeline than approval. Such individuals are not meant to bloom early. Their role is not to decorate the present, but to fertilize the future. And though the cost of this role is often loneliness, the gift is profound. When the world finally catches up, they offer not borrowed ideas, but something deeply lived, deeply earned, and deeply real. When approval is withheld, the psyche is forced to confront itself. There is no applause to lean on, no reassuring echo from the outside world to confirm identity. For most people, this absence feels unbearable, because identity is often constructed through reflection, through being seen, chosen, praised, and accepted. But when these mirrors are missing, something unusual and demanding occurs. The individual is pushed inward, sometimes violently, sometimes slowly, but inevitably. What others build through belonging, the rejected soul must build through meaning. This inward movement is rarely gentle. Early rejection carries the sting of confusion and self-doubt. The child wonders why they are not chosen. The adolescent questions what is wrong with them. The young adult feels invisible in rooms where others seem effortlessly affirmed. Yet beneath this pain, a deeper psychological process is unfolding. Without external validation to cling to, the individual must ask questions that others postpone for years. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I value when no one rewards me? What remains when approval is removed? Isolation becomes a teacher, though an unforgiving one. In solitude, the mind turns back on itself. Thoughts deepen. Feelings become more nuanced. The individual begins to notice inner contradictions, hidden fears, unspoken longings. This heightened self-awareness is not a luxury, it is a survival mechanism. When the outer world offers no guidance, the inner world must compensate. Slowly, an intimate relationship forms between the individual and their own psyche. They learn its moods, its symbols, its shadows. They become familiar with silence, and silence begins to speak. Rejection sharpens perception. Those who are not absorbed into the group learn to observe it from the outside. They see patterns others overlook. They notice the unspoken rules, the false certainties, the collective illusions that bind people together. This distance breeds insight. What looks like detachment is often clarity. While others are busy performing roles, the rejected individual studies the stage itself. This is why many late bloomers possess an unusual psychological depth. They were trained by necessity to see beneath appearances. Over time, this inward life produces resilience. Emotional pain, when endured consciously, strengthens the psyche rather than breaking it. Each experience of exclusion forces the individual to regulate their emotions internally, rather than outsourcing stability to external approval. This builds an inner center of gravity. The person learns to withstand disappointment, to tolerate ambiguity, to endure uncertainty without collapsing. These capacities do not announce themselves loudly, but they endure. They become the quiet backbone of character. Developmental psychology supports this pattern. Research consistently shows that individuals who face moderate adversity early in life, such as social exclusion, repeated failure, or chronic misunderstanding, often develop stronger coping strategies in adulthood. They become more adaptable, more reflective, and less dependent on external reinforcement. The psyche, when challenged but not crushed, compensates by growing stronger internal structures. What appears as disadvantage becomes psychological muscle. The crucial distinction lies in coherence. Those who rely heavily on approval often build fragmented identities, shaped by whatever earns acceptance in a given environment. When circumstances change, their sense of self falters. In contrast, the rejected individual, forced to construct meaning internally, develops coherence. Their identity is slower to form, but more integrated. It is held together by values rather than applause, by understanding rather than imitation. This coherence becomes evident later in life, when pressures increase and external rewards lose their power. What feels like abandonment in youth gradually transforms into independence in maturity. The person who learned early to stand alone is not easily swayed by trends, crowds, or fleeting judgments. They are less terrified of disapproval, because they have already survived it. Their decisions are guided less by fear of rejection and more by fidelity to inner truth. This does not make them cold or detached. It makes them grounded. They can engage with the world without dissolving into it. There is also a quiet compassion that often emerges from early rejection. Having known invisibility, these individuals recognize it in others. Having endured misunderstanding, they become more patient with difference. Their depth is not merely intellectual, it is emotional. They understand suffering not as an abstract concept, but as lived experience. This grants them an unusual capacity to hold complexity, to see both strength and fragility in the human condition without reducing either. The world did not shape these individuals through comfort or encouragement. It shaped them through resistance. And in responding to that resistance, they shaped themselves. They learned to listen inwardly when no one else was listening. They learned to trust their inner voice when the outer world dismissed it. This self-shaped identity may arrive late, but it arrives whole. Such individuals often look back and realize that what once felt like deprivation was, in fact, preparation. The absence of validation forced the development of inner authority. The lack of belonging cultivated self-knowledge. The early wounds became the very openings through which strength entered. And when life eventually demands depth, integrity, and resilience, as it always does, it is these inwardly formed individuals who are ready, not because they were favored early, but because they were forged slowly. We live in an age intoxicated by noise. Speed is praised as intelligence, certainty as strength, and visibility as value. To hesitate is seen as weakness. To reflect is mistaken for doubt. To move quietly is often interpreted as having nothing to say. In such a culture, depth struggles to make itself visible, not because it lacks substance, but because it refuses to shout. The rare personality, oriented toward meaning rather than performance, does not rush to speak simply to be heard. It listens first. It watches. It allows thoughts to mature before releasing them into the world. And for this, it is often misjudged. From early life, this misreading begins. In classrooms, the student who raises their hand quickly is assumed to understand, while the one who pauses is assumed to be unsure. In conversations, the one who speaks confidently is trusted, while the one who chooses words carefully is overlooked. In workplaces, decisiveness is rewarded, even when it is shallow, while contemplation is dismissed as hesitation. Yet what is truly happening is not a lack of confidence, but a surplus of awareness. The deep individual senses the complexity of things and resists reducing them to simple answers. Depth carries weight, and weight requires time. To think deeply is to hold multiple perspectives at once, to feel the emotional undercurrents beneath a situation, to recognize that reality is rarely as simple as it first appears. This awareness creates pauses. It slows reactions. It introduces nuance where the world prefers certainty. But in a culture that equates speed with competence, slowness is easily mislabeled as inadequacy. Confidence, in such environments, is frequently confused with volume. The loud voice dominates the room, not because it carries truth, but because it carries force. The quick response wins approval, not because it is wise, but because it is immediate. Meanwhile, the contemplative mind is quietly working, connecting ideas, integrating experience, refining understanding. This work is invisible and therefore undervalued. The rare personality learns early that their natural mode of being does not translate easily into recognition. Yet depth possesses a unique quality it compounds. Surface skills may deliver early results, but they are fragile. They depend on context, trends, and external reinforcement. Depth, by contrast, integrates experience over time. Each failure adds insight. Each success adds humility. Each encounter adds understanding. Slowly, a coherent inner framework forms, one that can hold complexity without collapsing into confusion. This is not immediately impressive, but it is enduring. Long-term research supports this truth. A well-known longitudinal study on adult development revealed that fulfillment and success later in life are strongly linked to self-understanding and emotional integration. These qualities are not acquired quickly. They require time, introspection, and the willingness to wrestle with uncertainty. Individuals who rush to define themselves early often do so by adopting roles that earn approval. But roles, when clung to too tightly, become cages. When circumstances change, these individuals may find themselves lost, clinging to identities that no longer fit. Those who wait, who tolerate not knowing, who endure periods of invisibility, are engaged in a deeper task. They are integrating their experiences into a meaningful whole. They are allowing contradictions to exist without forcing premature resolution. This process is uncomfortable, but it produces stability. When these individuals finally speak, their words carry weight. When they act, their actions are aligned. Their presence feels grounded because it emerges from an integrated self, not a performed one. Depth is often lonely in a shallow culture. The deep individual may feel out of step, as though they are moving at a different pace than the world around them. They may question whether something is wrong with them, for not keeping up, for not fitting neatly into the prevailing tempo. But this discomfort is not a sign of deficiency. It is a sign of attunement. They are responding not to the noise of the moment, but to the deeper currents beneath it. The tragedy is that society often attempts to cure this depth, to speed it up, to make it louder, to force it into recognizable forms. In doing so, it risks extinguishing the very qualities it will later desperately need: wisdom, discernment, emotional intelligence, and moral clarity. Depth cannot be rushed without being damaged. It unfolds according to its own rhythm. And when the moment arrives, when quick answers fail, when surface solutions collapse, when complexity demands integration, it is the deep individuals who are prepared. They have been practicing all along. Their quiet observation becomes insight. Their hesitation becomes discernment. Their patience becomes leadership. What once looked like weakness reveals itself as strength. Depth was never meant to win early applause. It was never designed to dominate shallow competitions. It was designed to endure, to guide, and to transform. In a world that confuses noise with value, depth waits, and in waiting, it grows. Early success often belongs to those who learn quickly how to adjust themselves to the expectations of the world. They sense what is rewarded and become skilled at reproducing it. They adopt the language, the manners, the ambitions that are praised, and in doing so, they move smoothly through established paths. This ability to adapt is not inherently wrong. It is, in many ways, necessary for social survival. Yet for the rare personality, adaptation carries a quiet cost. Something within resists the comfort of a life that feels borrowed rather than lived. This resistance is rarely dramatic. It does not always announce itself as rebellion. More often, it appears as hesitation, dissatisfaction, or a persistent feeling of misalignment. The individual may follow the expected path for a time, only to feel increasingly estranged from themselves. Roles feel tight, achievements feel hollow, praise fails to satisfy. There is an unspoken sense that life is being performed rather than embodied. For the rare personality, this inner tension becomes impossible to ignore. The psyche, in its wisdom, refuses to be reduced to a mask. Because of this, early success often eludes them. They struggle to fully commit to paths that do not reflect their inner truth. Career progress may stall, not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of identification. Relationships may feel uneasy, as though built on versions of the self that cannot be sustained. To the outside world, this looks like inconsistency, indecision, or even failure. But inwardly, a deeper negotiation is taking place. The individual is attempting to reconcile who they are with how they live. This inner resistance, though costly in the short term, becomes decisive over time. Each refusal to betray the inner self strengthens integrity. Each misalignment exposes what does not belong. Slowly, through trial and error, the individual sheds borrowed identities. What remains is not immediately impressive, but it is real. The psyche begins to align, and with alignment comes energy. Actions no longer require constant self-justification. Effort feels meaningful rather than exhausting. The individual is no longer divided against themselves. Late success emerges from this integration. When achievement finally arrives, it is not experienced as an intrusion, but as an expression. The work feels like a continuation of the self rather than a departure from it. This is why such success is stable. It does not depend on maintaining appearances or meeting ever-shifting expectations. It is rooted in authenticity, and authenticity does not fracture under pressure. It deepens. History and lived experience offer countless examples of this pattern. Many writers publish their most influential work only after decades of obscurity, once their voice has fully matured. Many thinkers are ignored until the world grows ready for the questions they are asking. Many entrepreneurs spend years wandering, experimenting, and failing before building something that truly reflects their values. When their success arrives, it carries a different quality. It is not loud, but it is enduring. It does not burn quickly, it sustains. Psychological studies on well-being support this reality. Research consistently shows that long-term satisfaction is more closely linked to alignment between inner values and outer actions than to early achievement or external status. Individuals who achieve quickly but at the cost of self-betrayal often experience burnout, emptiness, or identity crisis later in life. In contrast, those who delay achievement in order to preserve inner coherence report greater fulfillment and emotional stability over time. Their sense of self remains intact as circumstances change. The rare personality often suffers in comparison-driven environments because their timeline does not match the dominant narrative. They watch peers advance, accumulate symbols of success, and receive recognition, while they remain in a state of becoming. This can provoke doubt and envy, but comparison overlooks a crucial truth: not all growth is visible. Some development occurs beneath the surface, where foundations are laid rather than structures displayed. What looks like stagnation may in fact be preparation. Authenticity requires patience. It demands the courage to tolerate being unfinished in a world that prizes quick definition. It asks the individual to endure misunderstanding rather than live a lie. This path is not glamorous, but it is honest. And honesty has a cumulative power. Over time, it creates a life that feels inhabitable, a sense of purpose that does not collapse under scrutiny. When the rare personality finally stands in their work, their relationships, or their contribution to the world, there is a quiet authority about them. They do not need to convince others of their worth. It is evident in their coherence. They are not chasing approval, they are expressing truth. Their success does not demand constant reinforcement because it arises from within. It stands firmly because it stands on solid ground. Arriving late does not mean arriving weak. Often, it means arriving whole. Every era possesses its own unconscious filters, privileging certain behaviors, values, and talents while suppressing others. What is celebrated today will often be dismissed tomorrow, and what is dismissed today may, in time, be indispensable. The rare personality is acutely sensitive to this temporal imbalance. They carry qualities, sensitivity, reflection, integrity, that are out of step with their immediate surroundings, and therefore misunderstood, undervalued, or even ridiculed. They are attuned not only to what is, but to what could be. Their vision precedes the collective awareness, which is why it is so frequently met with resistance. The group instinctively defends the familiar. It clings to patterns it has mastered, and when confronted by difference, it often responds with rejection rather than curiosity. The qualities that have the power to transform society are exactly those that the society finds threatening or incomprehensible in the moment. Sensitivity, for instance, is a burden in a brutal age. Those who notice subtle injustices, who perceive the unspoken suffering of others, are often labeled as fragile or overly cautious. Yet without such sensitivity, cruelty passes unnoticed, and the cracks in human institutions remain hidden. Reflection in a distracted age is dismissed as indecision or disengagement. Yet it is reflection that prevents thoughtless action and allows insight to emerge. Integrity, in a performative culture, is often mocked as stubbornness or naivety. Yet it is integrity that preserves trust and lays the foundation for lasting relationships and stable societies. The rare personality carries these qualities regardless of immediate reward, long before society is ready to honor them. They are, in a sense, out of phase with their time, and this misalignment produces early rejection. It is precisely because they challenge the unconscious norms that the rare personality is isolated. Their ideas, their emotions, their sense of right and wrong do not fit neatly into the collective narrative. Friends, colleagues, and institutions often respond with subtle or overt dismissal. The young visionary may be told that they are impractical. The contemplative thinker may be labeled indecisive. The morally conscious may be accused of being difficult. These responses are not evidence of failure. They are the predictable reaction of a world that is not yet ready. The rare personality experiences this as alienation, often internalizing doubt and questioning whether their perception is valid. And yet, this very rejection is part of the necessary process of differentiation. It separates those who merely seek approval from those who are compelled to develop their unique capacities in service of something larger than themselves. Over time, the world changes. Crises arise, paradigms shift, and old certainties collapse. Suddenly, the qualities that were once ridiculed or ignored gain immense value. Sensitivity becomes insight. Reflection becomes strategic foresight. Integrity becomes leadership. The very traits that once made the individual appear out of place now position them to guide, influence, and inspire. History is full of such examples. Scientists, whose discoveries were dismissed in their youth, become pioneers decades later. Artists whose work was scorned in their early careers define cultural movements long after their contemporaries have faded. Leaders whose vision was misunderstood in early adulthood emerge as the architects of lasting change. The timing is not coincidental. It is the inevitable result of the individual growing into alignment with both inner capacity and societal readiness. Late success is therefore not merely a personal triumph. It is a natural phenomenon in which preparation meets opportunity. The rare personality develops depth, resilience, and authenticity precisely because they have endured early rejection. They cultivate patience and self-reliance. They refine judgment and perception, and they form a coherent inner life capable of sustaining achievement that is meaningful and enduring. When the world finally seeks the qualities it once rejected, the individual is ready, not as a reactionary force, but as a manifestation of accumulated wisdom. Their authority is not imposed, it emerges organically. They lead not by coercion or superficial influence, but by demonstrating what it looks like to act with insight, courage, and alignment. There is a rhythm to this process, a timing that cannot be hurried. Just as the seed does not force itself to sprout before the soil is fertile, the rare personality does not force recognition before society is prepared to receive it. Their journey is shaped not by the applause of the present, but by the inevitability of eventual necessity. Each rejection, each period of invisibility, and each experience of misunderstanding serves to sharpen and deepen capacities that are essential when the moment of contribution arrives. In this way, rejection is not a punishment, it is a form of incubation, allowing what is most needed to mature in silence. Thus, the world eventually comes to those who were once dismissed, not because they changed to fit the world, but because they remained faithful to themselves. What was once rejected becomes indispensable, not through force or chance, but through the natural unfolding of alignment between personal growth and collective readiness. The rare personality teaches us that timing is as crucial as talent, that patience is as powerful as ambition, and that the path to lasting influence often begins with being misunderstood, undervalued, and overlooked. When the world finally seeks what it once ignored, it discovers that the one who stood apart was always carrying the very qualities that make transformation possible. In the end, the rare personality's journey teaches a profound lesson: rejection is not always a verdict. It is sometimes a delay. What does not bloom in spring may be destined for autumn, richer and more enduring. If you have ever felt out of place, unseen, or behind, remember this: the seed that takes the longest to break the soil often grows the strongest roots. And roots, though invisible, determine the height of the tree.